when we've gone live.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us nice and early on a Saturday morning. I think most of the globe is in lockdown, so I'm sure we've woken you up, but hopefully not disturbed you. Welcome to the HESED Learning and Education Teachers Training webinar, which is called the Next Generation School Leadership. We want to allow as many people as possible to join, so we'll just be 1 or 2 minutes. You'll be hearing from me throughout this 90 minutes. I'm Juliana Olayinka. I am your moderator for today's proceedings. I will be helped out by David Wortley, who you won't be seeing, but you may possibly be hearing, because as lots of you know, you can sometimes run into some technical difficulties. I'm not foreseeing that, but it is a possibility. So thank you very much for joining. We will be starting within the next 1 or 2 minutes. So please, please, please keep yourself on mute, although there will be an opportunity for some Q&A towards the end of the session. So thank you very much. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, thank you so much for taking out your time to join us this morning for a HESED Learning and Development webinar. This is solely really for the education community and predominantly teachers, teachers from across the world, but mainly in Nigeria, just to really come together and to discuss some of the issues that we may have had, some of the learning opportunities that are available for students across the world. We are quite rightly in some really crazy times at the moment. The pandemic has affected everybody, solely in the global north, but of course in the global south as well. We've been hearing lots about long COVID affecting teachers and students on the African continent. And we wanted to bring you all together to discuss some of the ways we can perhaps benefit from online learning by looking at particular sectors and opportunities. We have 3 amazing educators who will be talking about some of their experiences and sharing some information about ways that we can collaborate and look at different parts of learning that can enrich students, and by way of doing that, enrich the learning experience for yourselves too. This is hosted by HESED Learning and Development. HESED is an online learning platform. This isn't to completely disrupt the traditional classroom, but really what HESED does is help supplement the learning at school by providing complementary online learning at home. It's still in the works. Lots of people are working across the globe to make the HESED online learning experience as enriching as possible. And Matthew Odu, who is the CEO of HESED, will be sharing some of his thoughts and the vision for HESED learning later on in the platform. So do listen out for when he speaks. And I do hope you have a pen and paper at hand so you can take down as much information as possible. What I please would like you to do before we start is, if you can, go into a web browser. If you could just pull up a new tab and go into Slido. It's spelled pretty clearly here, SLIDO. If you put in the code, which I'm going to write down now, 35272, it should come up like this. I'll give you a couple of minutes to make sure you can do that. And if you click on HESED webinar, Next Generation School Leadership, there is a live poll that's on at the moment. This is just so we can know exactly where you are, what your age is, and what your profession is. What we hope to do is use this information to make sure that when we are providing you with another webinar, we can make sure that it is tailored to exactly this audience and who you are. So if you could please just spend a couple of minutes doing that. So that's HESED webinar. If you put in the code 35272 on Slido, there's just a couple of questions. And again, this is really just to help us understand exactly who you are and provide more tailored webinars in the future. So I'll just give you a couple of moments to fill that out. I know there's more than one person on this webinar, so I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to make sure that everybody can go and fill out that live poll. Okay. So I mentioned, let me go back, that's me. I mentioned Matthew Odu, who is the CEO of HESED Learning and Development. He's also a senior executive program trainer. He is a fellow at the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. He is the managing consultant of Practical Advice Consulting Limited. He is the treasurer and trustee of the Commonwealth Countries League. You may all know the Commonwealth is of exceptional importance to the UK at the moment, post-Brexit. So that's very interesting. And he is a formal panel member of the Youth Offending Services in Hounslow, London. I'm sure later Matthew will be sharing more information about why he decided to create HESED, but he's certainly somebody who is seen as a leader in the public and private school sector here in the UK and across Nigeria. I'm your moderator. Hopefully you'll get to see me later. And this is me, I'm Juliana Olayinka. I am a communication strategist with HESED. I am on TV quite a few times a day. You'll probably catch me a little bit later. I oversee Channels Television's London Bureau, and I also host my own business show, Channels Business Global, which goes out each and every week. I also have my own consultancy firm, and I'm a director of IORMA Africa. IORMA, very interesting foresight research group. It's a network, a field of some really amazing individuals across the world who come together looking at the ways consumer interest is changing and evolving over the years. And I've worked across the media here in the UK. Now, the most important thing, our trainers, the people you'll be hearing from a lot more as the morning goes on. We have Dr. Shaun Colliday. Dr. Shaun, I know that we can't see you, but I know this is a pretty limited bio I've tried to squeeze in here. But Dr. Shaun is the Associate Professor in Entrepreneurship at De Montfort University. He's also the faculty head of research for students training for business and law at the DMU. He is a member of the UN expert group on the operationalization of social capital, and he is a prolific author of over 40 academic publications. I know that Dr. Shaun is working on several publications at the moment. So please, please, please make sure you send him a message and get in touch with him about ways that he can collaborate with you or research with you over some specific topics. We also have John Rainford, FRSA. John Rainford, a very good friend, colleague. John is a transformational thinking, innovation and technology leader. He's also the visiting fellow at the University of Birmingham Business School. He's a vice chairman and a colleague at IORMA. He's a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts and Manufacture, a mentor of Ernst & Young's Global Entrepreneur of the Year, and he is the inventor of the Darwin Matrix. I'm sure in lots of the discussions that we'll be having with John today, he'll be giving us some insight on this absolutely life-changing Darwin Matrix learning process. We also have Linda Weymouth Lally, an absolutely phenomenal woman. I had the opportunity to interview her in the past. She is one of the key leaders of education on the continent, solely and specifically in South Africa. She is the founder and the chief executive officer of African Teen Geeks, which is an online learning platform for young people in South Africa, particularly those who are interested in STEM and coding. That's one of her main areas of expertise. African Teen Geeks is a non-profit organization. She's a Columbia University alumni. She has so many awards. It was really, really difficult to try and put down some of the ones that are the most important to her, but she's a Tech Woman Fellow and an Innovative Magazine Top 50 Visionary Women in Tech to watch. So really, I don't want to talk too much because I don't have a glass of water by the side of me, but just to let you know some of the subjects that we will be going into today, which is STEM, entrepreneurship and parental support. Why these topics? Well, we know that now, especially with how many millions and millions of jobs that have been lost due to the pandemic, STEM, meaning science, technology, engineering and mathematics, are absolutely vital. They're extremely important to our children who are, coming up in a slightly challenging world. And so, the ability to think critically and solve complex problems and drive advancements in science and technology is absolutely important. And the best teachers are going to have to, put their foot forward to make sure that they are offering this type of quality information to their students. Entrepreneurship, also extremely important. You think of an entrepreneur, you may think of somebody, that knocking on doors selling cookies. It's so much more than that. Entrepreneurship and having an entrepreneurship mindset is important because it focuses on real world skills. Not everybody is going to be excellent or excel at writing and doing exams. It's how you think, how you collaborate with your classmates, and how you use those life learned skills in the outside world, that separates us. And I know John Rainfield, not only with the Darwin Matrix, but also with Strawberry Fields, another business that he runs, will be able to go through some of those critical parts of learning. Parental support is, of course, important. Any of us that have children that have been in a lockdown just know how important a parent is, in the life of a child when it comes to learning. It's, that environment that really shapes a child. An African saying that we're used to hearing is, it takes a village, and it does take a village. And I think, especially at the moment with how much time children are learning at home, it's really important to enhance the relationship between parents and teachers. And Linda Way will be going through some of those key points for us. So why are we doing this? I've explained some of the reasons why, but some of what we want you to be able to take away from this session is that, you know, being a teacher is not just about presenting information. We want to try and expand the horizon by letting teachers and educators know that it is about relationship, and we want children to be able to discover for themselves and think for themselves. We also want to foster collaboration. This is a great networking opportunity. Please make sure, you know, when you're writing down your questions, you know, you're passing on your contact details to the educators that are here. We want to create a network and foster collaboration between all of us. We also want to, you know, show more respect for teachers, especially teachers in Africa and Nigeria. It's such an incredibly hard time. We know that, you know, infrastructure can be an issue, getting just to and from work is an issue, dealing with children that may not have the opportunity to pay for their education, but clearly they're really, really bright. And so we do just want to offer a hand of support, which is one of the reasons why. And I'll read this last point. Teacher support of students and the lasting effects of that support is one of the most powerful factors in shaping a country's future. Their work is as complex and challenging as it is critical. Each student brings a wide range of ever-evolving needs and strengths. Each school and district has an ever-shifting landscape of priorities, pressures, resources, and reforms. I think we all understand that, and we all know that, you know, teaching, as is, you know, with being a nurse and being a frontline staff in the pandemic, is of such importance. And we do want to reflect that in the discussion that we have today. Okay. I'm finally going to pass on. I'll be passing on to Dr. Seun Kolade, who will be going through some of the important aspects of STEM learning. Before David Wortley does share the screen, well, not share the screen, but put a spotlight on Dr. Seun, I did just want to, just for a few minutes, go through, I think, quite a nice video that kind of highlights what STEM is. If any of us need reminding, we probably don't, but it's all COVID at the moment. So it's quite nice to have a look at something else. And this video from an Australian university just gives us a little example and just reminds us exactly what STEM is. We won't be playing all of it, but I'll just be playing a short part before I hand over to Dr. Seun.
STEM. What is it for? Let's be clear, STEM isn't a new subject, and it's not just about integrating science, maths, and technology. It's about designing learning that engages learners in collaborative problem solving to design solutions drawing on deep disciplinary knowledge of science, technologies, and mathematics. It's about designing learning for both critical and creative thinking and collaboration. It's about designing learning that embeds authentic problem solving. This approach to STEM education will develop STEM-capable citizens, people who thrive personally and professionally, make informed decisions in their daily life, and are empowered to follow STEM careers and lead innovation at any age. So, with this in mind, let's think about Carly and Theo and their learning journey in South Australian preschools and schools. We want Carly and Theo to develop positive dispositions in STEM from the start of their education. We want them to be confident and involved learners. Educators in Carly and Theo's preschool will design spaces and opportunities that generate curiosity and wonder. As Carly and Theo play, their educators will support and challenge them to be noticers, problem finders, and problem solvers. They will capitalise on Carly's questions like, can a drone fly all the way to the moon? They build partnerships with local communities, museums, and libraries to help learners with their inquiries. As our learners transition from preschool to primary school, we want them to maintain enthusiasm and engagement in STEM learning. Teachers will design learning that brings in the Australian curriculum learning areas in STEM. We want our students to understand that science is fundamentally a human endeavour to use computational design and systems thinking to design solutions using technologies and think mathematically through the 4 proficiencies. It is important for learning to be meaningful and relevant. This can be done through integrating the learning areas of science, mathematics and technologies, or bringing an authentic context to each of the learning areas. We want our students to understand engineering as a way of thinking, to see how engineers apply the concepts and skills from the different disciplines to design solutions that enable us to live in a society that is affordable, healthier, smarter, and ethical. Teachers in Carly and Theo's school will design learning that intentionally brings the STEM disciplines to life. Their teachers will create a need to understand the concepts and the connections between them. For example, their teachers design learning about fitness apps students use so they can see how it has been engineered to improve our lifestyle. Teachers can use this context to surface the biology associated with heart rate, the mathematics with tracking location, and the technology that enables you to collect in real time the data you need to create better fitness solutions. They build partnerships with zoological sites, botanical gardens, local council waterways, and researchers, investigating their questions at universities to help learners be problem solvers. As our learners move from primary school to secondary, we need to maintain their engagement in STEM learning. We continue to design learning that develops confident and capable young scientists, mathematicians, and technologists.
Okay, I think we'll leave that there because I definitely want to hear from Dr. Sheln. So David, if you could please highlight Dr. Sheln for us. Can we all see Dr. Sheln? Hopefully.
No, you need to stop sharing.
I'll stop
Juliana.
I'm here. Right. Hello, Juliana.
Thank you so much. Hello. It's nice to see you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for having me, and thank you to Mati, Hudu, and HESED for the great work that you're doing. And it's great to be here with John and David.
I feel like it's only natural to start with COVID and how this has completely disrupted the lives of children. I think sometimes we forget, even though we know any parent and teacher knows how resilient children are, when we talk about some of the awful atrocities that have happened during COVID, one of the biggest casualties is children's education. In the UK, in the global north, of course, we can rely on technology, but can you just tell us how this may have impacted on children's learning in Africa?
Yes, I seem to have lost you a bit there, Juliana. But yes, I do get I pick up the bit about COVID. Yeah, the pandemic has such a disruptive impact, across the world, in all of life. The economy, has been massively disrupted, and certainly we have seen big destruction to children education. So much so that developed countries such as the UK have struggled to cope in the wake of this disruption, and one can only begin to imagine how countries in Africa are even struggling even more to grapple with the destructive impact of the pandemic on children education. And one of the issues that has come up then in conversations across the world is how technology can be used to bridge or to mitigate this impact on children's education. And so there has been here in the UK efforts to implement remote learning. That took a bit of hard going in the first round of the lockdown. But in this second lockdown, you've seen a bit of schools going on Google to provide remote learning access, but other non-state actors stepping into the gap right here in the UK. And that is why what HESED is doing is quite important, because we cannot just leave this only to state actors. We need non-state actors to step in to complement, but also to bring about some kind of, if you like, reverse disruption, through the instrumentality of innovation, to provide alternative channels and alternative means of providing access to good quality education for children.
Thank you, Dr. Shaun. Let's go now to our topic of STEM. I won't give out my age. I think my profile picture makes me look quite young, actually, so I'll let people guess that. But when I was in school, there was no such thing as STEM. Where has STEM come from in terms of, kind of isolating this as an important learning tool? And why is it so vital? And do African educators understand the importance of STEM? I know there have been some massive Silicon Valley, trips into Nigeria. There are tech hubs springing up across the continent. But are these just flashes in the pan, or have we got a long way to go when it comes to integrating this into schools?
Yeah. Thanks, Juliana. I mean, so we've always had, STEM around us, but maybe not quite in the same way in which we speak about it now, because so much has happened, in the world over the past, few decades. I mean, so we've always had things, about science, in primary school, for example. I'm sure you had what is called elementary science and so on. And of course, you had, arithmetic or mathematics. But the landscape has changed so much over the past few decades. We now speak of what is called the knowledge economy. And simply put, is the idea, we're talking about capital as being the ultimate resource. When you talk about, the capitalist, the capitalist mode, and capital will continue to have continuing resource. But now we talk about knowledge knowledge itself as the ultimate resource. And also we live in the age, where we talk about digital transformation, about where knowledge is actually the key thing driving the world economy and development, industrial progress, and so on. In the US, for example, it's reported that about 50 to 80% of growth in GDP is directly linked to investment in education, especially in STEM. So when you talk about STEM, like the excellent video you showed earlier, we're talking about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I think the idea is that these are interlinked. The video captures it very well. This should not be seen as isolated, subject, but there is an integrated view because they speak to one another. But if I may just give a few brief comments on the context of this conversation. So, I mean, we are talking of the context in which 60% of Africa's population is under 25 years. So that is a massive contrast to the rest of the world, where the rest of the world is grappling with population age, and it is reported by 2035, sub-Saharan Africa in particular, we have a population, a working population larger than the rest of the world. So that is quite important. But you also have a situation where infrastructure is quite a big challenge. Less than a quarter of primary African schools have access to electricity. And in fact, less than 25% of higher education students in Africa are in STEM. And so investment in STEM education is important, both from state actors, but also from non-state actors like what HESED is doing. And the final point on the context is that a report, came out 2-3 years ago that by 2022, about 75 million jobs will be displaced as a result of digital transformation. That is important. That is really important. And Africa needs to be prepared for what is coming and what is already happening. But at the same time, at that same period, 2022, about 133 million new jobs will be created. All of this as a result of digital transformation. So the loss of 75 million jobs, the creation of 133 million new jobs will be as a result of digital transformation. That's a net of 55 million jobs. But those who are going to be able to take advantage of these job opportunities will be those who have the right kind of skills in STEM, in science, in technology, in engineering, in mathematics. Not leaving the other non-STEM subjects, they are also important. But because there's a deficit in terms of the African context in STEM, that is why we're having this conversation about the need to bridge the gap. Because the opportunities of the future, the work of the future, and the future of work will be driven by the knowledge economy and those who are skilled, to take advantage of these opportunities. I think you are muted now.
Thank you, Dr. Chan. I want to ask you one last question, and can I just remind the audience, please do put any questions you have in the a chat box for Dr. Chan. We will be doing a Q&A later. I want to ask you about, it's kind of two questions in one really, competitiveness and teachers training. I say competitiveness because, are African students able to compete? Are they able to compete with their Asian counterparts? Are they able to compete with their European counterparts? I would like to think yes. I'm sure you have, Dr. Chan, received so many WhatsApp messages about, some excellent Nigerians who have made it into Biden's administration. I'm still waiting for my phone call, actually. And there'll be really great messages of hope about young children who are able to code better than their teacher. We do have some of these groundbreaking case studies, don't we? But then on the other hand, some of the teachers on the continent are just not getting the training. And I think, the COVID pandemic, and I'm really interested to see what some of the audience think, has exposed, some of the inadequacies of teachers, not just teachers, parents alike. Sometimes I look at some of my children's questions and I'm like, oh my goodness, I have no idea what this is. Are teachers getting the training they need to be able to teach the children?
Absolutely.
And are we competitive? Are these just one or two instances, or are we competitive? Do we have the brains in Africa to compete at the very top?
So this is really important, and that is actually the next thing I was going to speak to. So you were reading my mind quite there. So we have, brilliant, young people. We certainly do have the brains. The examples you've cited, prove the fact that we have the brains. But what we do have, what we do not have, rather, is the opportunity, is the environment, is the right environment, to develop these, these resources, these human resources, and these brains. And that is what is important. That is why when you see, African, young people, thriving in a great way, when they go to the Americas, or when they go to Europe, they are really inspiring and positive stories. And that is why we need to have a conversation. There are two conversations we need to have. One is about access, to education, to STEM education, which is part of the thing that, HESED is trying to tackle. But we need to take a step back, actually, first, and speak about quality, about the quality of education. So what you have more often than not is the curriculum, or the curricula, in this subject that have been delivered in many African countries are sad to say, oftentimes, several decades, behind the timeline. And this is not for lack of effort on the part of teachers. They are making as much effort as they could, but like you said, the capacity is not there, the training is not there, and that is part of what we need to address. And there are great opportunities in this age of digital transformation. That we don't need to only confine ourselves to traditional channels, which again brings us back to HESED. Because what we're saying then is that there are non-traditional channels of trying to build capacity, both on the part of teachers, but also of direct access to young people, where they can, access these resources. And in fact, technology is something that we have to then think about, in a very creative way. I know there's been a lot in terms of, online, facilities and programs, but we don't need to confine ourselves to, to resources that require, internet as well. There are now, conversations around, putting entire curricula in tablets, where, young people can access this in remote area, and they can power and charge this, with solar energy. And where they can actually, work on this tablet without needing, to access the internet. So we need to have, those really important, conversations also about how are we supporting the teachers through both, traditional channels as well, through these online and, technological resources, where they can upgrade their knowledge, they can upgrade, the understanding of the trends in the world. So that when we train young people, both from primary, secondary, as well as, higher education, they are not going out there and they are not fitting into the requirements and the needs of the industry, because things are changing at a fast pace. The curriculum of 5-10 years ago is obsolete for today. And that is why, we need to be deliberate and conscious and strategic about how we capacitate our teachers on an ongoing basis. So I will just pause for now. Because of time, maybe there will be, more questions coming on later. But it's really important. The question of access, the question of quality, we need to look at them as a kind of, integrated whole, because they are mutually reinforcing.
Question of access and the question of quality. Thank you so much, Dr. Seun Kolade. We will get back to you later. There were a couple of comments which I'll read out. We've got one from Oludare Adiogun saying the main challenge we're facing currently is infrastructural deficiencies. Yes, for us to be competitive, these infrastructures must be addressed. Absolutely right. And Faith Shotade says, here in Nigeria, I see a lot of outdated and irrelevant content in school curriculums. It appears the schools in Nigeria don't understand the goal of education. It's so true. It's so true. I'm just wondering, so then so a lot of these excellent case studies, are these one-offs? Are these one-offs? Or are, I do want to put that question out there for later, perhaps, some of these traditional kind of old school curriculums, do they still embed some really important fundamental insights that we cannot ignore? There was a question as to why some of our nurses and doctors are absolutely amazing. Is it because they're reading these really old textbooks? I think, there must be something that we can drag from the old and the new. Dr. Seun, we'll come back to that later. Go on, Dr. Seun, please, quickly, before we move on. Please, Dr. Seun, you can respond to that.
All right, okay, so a very quick one. Yeah, okay, absolutely. So that's a good question. So we cannot discount the knowledge of the past, because they are the foundation. The way the production of knowledge works is not an isolated process. We actually, just like Isaac Newton, aptly said, we stand on the shoulders of giants. So the curricula that we have 20 years ago, 30 years ago, those knowledge are important. So we're not saying, forget about it. What we're saying is that you need to build on them. You need to link them, from the past to the present. That is how to get, young people ready for the 21st century knowledge economy. It's not about, ignoring, it's about combining. It's about, bringing it all together.
Yes, and keeping the students engaged. Hakeem Ramon, I'll get to your comment shortly. We've got to go to our next trainer now. We will be coming back and speaking to Dr. Seun. David, our man in the background, I'm going to share my screen now. So if we can stop spotlighting Dr. Seun, we'll move on to our next subject. Okay, so that was wonderful from Dr. Seun. Okay, we're now going on to entrepreneurship. And we're going to be doing that with John Rainford, FRSA. We do have a very short video. I say very short, and I'm so sorry that I'm going to have to cut this in the middle. But TEDx talks can go on forever. But this, I thought, was a really good way to explain why it's important to bring entrepreneurship or an entrepreneurship mindset into the classroom. And I believe this lady does it in a really great way. And I know that John will be able to pick up from that and share some of his mind-blowing accounts of why it's important.
Now, some may say I haven't been on this earth very long yet, but as I close in on my 3rd decade here, there are some things I've come to notice, some important patterns that I've recognized about human nature and the development of civilization. A pattern, as you guys can see, is something that happens in a regular and repeated way. One pattern in particular that I want to focus this talk on is that of education. Education is something that runs deep. Education has permeated every single century, continent, and culture that's ever existed. Education, the transfer of knowledge from one person to another, is a very natural and necessary process. In fact, it's essential to our ability to not only survive, but thrive and flourish. And it's for this reason that education is something people fight to have access to. Education is something people pick up and move across town to get closer to. Education is something that people save their entire lives to pay for. Education is something that we all think we can have to secure a great job. And in my case, and maybe perhaps many of you in the audience, education is also something that people build their entire lives around. But there's something critically important we all must understand about education. Everything we know it to have been up to this point, we created. I'll say that again. Everything we know education to be up to this point, we human beings have created. The institutions of learning, the curriculum, the degrees, the roles of student, teacher, administrator. It didn't just fall from the sky. Education is a social construct that we created. We've decided what the most important information is to pass on, and we've also decided the delivery mechanism we think is best to get that information forward. But I dare to ask, is it working? Is what we've created the education system to be working? I think the best place to find this answer is in the outcomes we've produced to date. When students enter a school system, they're all in the same class, but sooner rather than later, testing begins. Those students that test proficient or advanced, they're put off on one path, the path of, say, for instance, gifted classes. Those students that score below basic, they're put on another path, probably one that consumes of remedial training. What happens, though, more times than not, is that these paths never cross again. And those in the remedial track never really get a fair chance at catching up. But the saddest part of it all is that some of them never even make it to the destination. High school dropout rates in this country are absolutely atrocious. Every year, 1.2 million high school students drop out. That's one student every 26 seconds. Couple that with suspension rates, and you have an entire youth population that are leaving the school system and oftentimes going directly into the prison system. If you haven't yet researched it, I would highly recommend you look up the school to prison pipeline. It's a very real and scary thing. But what about the teachers, you may be wondering? Surely the teachers are here to fix everything. Now, coming as a teacher myself, I definitely firmly believe that teachers are the arguably most important factor in a student's trajectory and personal development. But the fact of the matter is that most teachers are overworked, overwhelmed, and underpaid. So how much of a factor can they play if they're not sticking around? Within 5 years, 50% 50% of all new teachers leave the profession. And you may be wondering about the students that were on that fast track to success, the ones who graduated from high school. You're probably thinking, well, they're surely set up for success for the rest of their lives. But who's really thinking like that anymore? Honestly, how much is a high school degree worth nowadays? What these students are finding is that they now have to go into debt, taking tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars out in student loans in order to acquire that higher degree that's supposed to set them up for this decent job. What they find oftentimes is that even though they go and aspire to that higher degree, once they have it, that higher degree has now become the new high school degree. And there's even another stage you have to get to, even more loans you have to get. It's a vicious cycle. And I could go on and on and on about the outcomes we've produced so far with the system we've created. I could talk about how the system we've created is really skewed against low-income minority students. I could talk about how arts and creativity are being stripped out of classrooms every day. I could talk about how the lack of physical activity and the mass feeding of processed foods to the students have created an obesity epidemic we've never seen before. I could perhaps talk about how the students with special needs still aren't being properly serviced, even in 2015. I could talk about how these schools, unfortunately, have become breeding grounds for bullying, violence, and even suicide. I could go on and on and on about some of the outcomes we're producing because of the system we've set up. But I'll stop there. I'll stop. And I'll ask you, how are you feeling about what I just shared? Knowing that this is a system we've created, we've bought into, we've perpetuated. Maybe you're feeling surprised by some of the things I've shared, perhaps angry, maybe even sad. I know that's how I feel. But Mandela, what about all the good? What about all the good that this system has created? Surely it can't be all bad. I would say I absolutely agree with you. I mean, just look at you. Just look at me. Just look at everyone in this room. Most of us have gone through this system, and we turned out all right, didn't we? Many of us in this very room have even taught in this system, and we're darn proud of the impact we made on our students' lives. But you can't overlook the facts. The fact of the matter is that there are still too many people outside of this room who have not benefited from this system.
I'm going to leave it there because, oh my goodness, I could see we're all kind of shaking our heads like, yes, yes, she's speaking the truth. And this is really nice for me to bring John Rainford on to the platform. I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to our man in the background, David. And I'll be speaking to John, who I've had so many of these conversations with before. It's just, John, I want you to pick up nicely from that video, because we have had private conversations about this, about the system, and just how, you know, the traditional schooling system, unfortunately, just isn't working. It's not working for children in high income countries, let alone it not working in, you know, low income countries. And this is why we've used the term entrepreneurship. We could have used so many other terminologies, but it's not about the tests, is it? It's about a mindset. And I know we will have a lot of people who are Christian, who are Muslim, who are religious on the line, who understand it is about how you're thinking and how you're feeling and where you want to go, what you want to achieve. Can you tell us why and how that is important for school and for education?
Well, I think it is all about a mindset, like you say. Unfortunately, the educational structure has been around for probably 200 years and still facing into the past. And I think we need a complete new paradigm shift and I think copying older models isn't necessarily the way forward. We need to really replace the model so that it makes the old model redundant. And some great names like Buckminster Fuller said that. If I can share my screen, if that's possible, I can give you some ideas to show how this could be manifested. So I'll just show you a very short video. It's only 2 minutes long, but it does describe the paradigm shift that we need to take on board. Let's see if I can just get this up. Hopefully you can hear it.
One of transformational leadership. So we're looking at
Not seeing anything at the moment, John.
You can't hear?
I can hear faintly, but at the moment we're seeing a white screen.
David, can you help us out with that to give us access to the sound?
Well, we aren't seeing a video. We aren't
That's right.
seeing a video, so you need to unshare what you were sharing before and share the new screen with the video on it.
Right. Okay, let's see if I can manage that. Well, I can't. That's it. Is this okay? Is this working?
That's working. We can see you now. I think it's just to press the play. And more volume would be great.
So we're looking at how do we develop leaders, and it comes back to this idea that complex adaptive systems is about developing everyone within the organization as a potential leader, so that if one of those agents gets knocked out, that other people can step in. A good example of that is like murmuring. You ever see birds flocking around? They're all flying around. They all seem to be independent, and yes, they're following a process that actually allows them to survive. So murmuring is a visual way of seeing it, but in actual fact, if they work together as an organization and each one of them can take the leadership, then it can help direct the rest of the organism. So there's the same in business. You know, these approaches that allow us to get the best from the people within the organization. It's very closely allied to complex adaptive systems, closely allied to biological systems, so that they're like a proven entity of survivability. So we looked at that in the context of a business performance. How can we best measure and monitor that progress in the business itself using the Darwin matrix? Basically, we want to create a very powerful organization which is transparent, and the ideas can be shared in real time and actually are encrypted as well to US military standards.
The last picture in there, I'll just come out of here. Oh, wait.
Should we stop sharing your screen now?
Yep, we can do that. But there's some other slides I could have shown you about the structure, because I think it's fundamentally not sort of in the past facing, but actually looking to the future and embracing technology itself. So I think that's the way forward. So rather than copy Western ideology particularly with education, we probably need to have a fresh start, a new paradigm shift. So whether that explains that well enough, but I've got some more slides to show you how it might manifest itself. The last slide, for example, was showing Gell Mann, who's a famous physicist. So it's based on structure. We spoke about before about structure, how that can be realized in real time.
Oh no, sorry, John, please, if you would like to share your screen, please do. I just thought that the video had stopped, but please do share your screen. And whilst you're doing that, because I suppose a lot of the individuals we'll have in the audience may want to understand exactly what this means. So if we was to explain it to somebody who doesn't understand what a change in mindset means and how they can bring it into the classroom, why would you say it's so important? You can answer that whilst you're getting your screen up for us.
It's really, it comes back to, I mean, I've taught entrepreneurship in many countries around the world, and it always comes back to the mindset in the first place, rather than the technology shaping the way we think. We need to have a mindset which is a capable mindset, which you find sometimes lacking in schools. It's only a question of really helping the teachers to have a much more proactive stance and embracing this idea of enterprise, because enterprise actually creates wealth which can be fed back into the system. So here we're just showing STEM. You can see this all right, I hope. The STEM slide. Yes?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, thank you. And we cover different areas because the structure itself, the system, can be manifested in any organization. And we're pioneering some of these with ABB, for example. Also in India, you'll probably see me on the left here at the top, helping to remote villages get access to technology, but at the same time, it's the attitude to the technology that really matters. So looking at leadership again, I think it needs to be top down and bottom up. It needs to be all measurements instead of just top down. And you know, if you look at people like Elon Musk and look at the way he's developed his innovative systems, it all comes back to systems thinking and providing a structure to how we actually grow as individuals. So if we look at the World Economic Forum, for example, these are the top future skills that we all need, and the World Economic Forum is a great resource for information and knowledge. It's about analytical thinking, which is related to STEM, innovation, learning and creativity. And sometimes we seem to stop this idea of creativity developing with individuals within schools, when really it should be providing a structure to enhance creativity within individuals and within organizations. So as I say, I've ran the entrepreneurship MBA and innovation, looking at creativity for competitive advantage. I remember, Juliana, that you mentioned before about, you know, how have we got the competitive advantage? Well, we can have the competitive advantage if we've got the mindset to make that a reality. So this is just some stuff that we've done with Jonathan Mickey, the former director of Birmingham Business School. And we pushed this around the world. This is another university where we've looked at using visualization systems, which is then transferred digitally. And it is, and the students will tell you, it's about attitudes. But what we do is we bring the entrepreneurs into the classroom, not to talk at the students, but actually to get the students to work on real businesses. So you see this Bruce Thompson, he's based in Birmingham. He's actually used some of the ideas and created wealth because of the ideas the students have. And I think that's a powerful way of integrating the economy, industry with ordinary students, you know, bring them into up to speed with what's going on. So we do a lot of research on creativity and how it can be enhanced within the individuals. And according to Forbes, 80% of companies believe creativity is a critical skill. But can you see any evidence of it necessarily? You'll see it in primary school, and slowly it gets crushed, unfortunately, in secondary school. So I'm sort of trying to be a pioneer to try to introduce more creativity into the classroom structure by giving it a structure for expression. So this is Liverpool University, again using visualization processes and trying to get people to see the bigger picture. And any child, you know, or adult can get the idea that actually if they see the bigger picture, it's much more powerful than just seeing an isolated. I remember Sean saying that about, you know, we mustn't see it in an isolated situation, but seeing the bigger picture is about systems and systems thinking. So the impact of making an enterprising culture within a community, whether it's in India or in Africa, has an impact on the whole economy. I mean, it's almost like self-evident. Why wouldn't it be? We don't all have to be entrepreneurs, but we can all be enterprising. That's the key. So just looking at it in practical terms, this is a fat version of me on the right. But, you know, the Charles Eaton marketing, you know, we teach them a structure for creativity, how to think outside the box. All these things are already happening in pockets around the world, and we just need to look at them and then, you know, if you like, bring them into the education system. Why not? It's not just for marketeers, it's for every single individual on the planet if they're willing to learn. So all we do is introduce these processes into schools, and it makes them incredibly powerful, and we'll work with industry so that they're financing it. Again, same thing in Hong Kong. We've taught around the world, Hong Kong and Singapore and Finland, various places on the planet. This is an initiative that brought this entrepreneurial spirit, we can call it that, into the UK, Spain, Germany, and Finland. And we're doing some more work at the moment in Canada and various parts of the world that are receptive to these new ideas. So it's gone beyond STEM. You've got STEAM now, which is the A for art in it. So more creativity can enhance capability and economic resilience. So this is just one example of, you know, having an enterprise culture. It improves the productivity of the whole organization, but it's based on a structure which can be implemented. And my view is that it can be implemented in primary schools as well. So yes, well, I had the privilege to mentor a young man, and he was Global Entrepreneur of the Year for Ernst & Young. But again, all of this is based on scientific STEM research. Complex adaptive systems was developed by people, not just Elon Musk and NASA, but people like Murray Gell-Mann. They just don't implement these things enough, in my view, into the educational system. So it's based on scientific paradigms. There's a famous guy, Buckminster Fuller, who says, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. That's the way we ought to be doing it. So we have models of excellence that other schools can copy. Again, this is sort of provocative because it's, is it possible? And you know, we're bringing art and challenging the way we normally think. And that's the only way really we're going to have these leaps, if you like, of paradigm shifts. We need to be future facing and not be restricted by the old constraints of education. This is an example of Halfords. It's a big organization in the UK, well known, and we got them to fund these activities in the schools to empower the students. Again, they don't have to go into business, they just have to be more enterprising and have a can-do attitude. And that's all it takes. And we can do the same with the teachers, have this can-do attitude. This was with Warwick University, this particular activity. So we can do it. We can embrace the businesses and say, the future of your business relies on the people that you bring into the business to enhance its progress. This is an example of talking about digital technology changing the world. So we're mentoring, this is particularly a business in New York State, and we're actually mentoring businesses around the world using these processes. They're not completely new, but they're actually groundbreaking. And we need to embrace, as I say, these technologies so that you can talk to people in real time and change, if you like, the business plan. Instead of it being a yearly business plan, it's changed day by day because it needs to be adaptive to new situations.
Sorry, John, I'm just looking at
sorry,
the time.
am I just talking too much?
No,
Sorry.
No, you're not just talking. This is incredibly useful. I'm just looking at the time. How many slides do you have left now, John?
I've got 3 slides left, I think.
And then we'll bring it back to the classroom.
Yes. Okay. This is really about neuroscience, which, you know, is an up-and-coming science, only being developed in the last 20 years or so. And we need to get our heads around what it's actually telling us. And this is a good example of, you know, we may think that we are making decisions when in fact there's an emotional amygdala which actually is making the decisions for us. And the more we understand about the human brain, the more we can actually help the human mind to evolve and to learn in better ways. So it's all out there. It's like a very cartoon illustration, but it's actually acting as one. We're providing it a structure which enhances the system itself. And this, I think we're close to the end now. The reap what you sow, what you sow. So if you imagine the children growing up in the world with real purpose and empowered. So it's this sort of idea that we should integrate it early on as possible. I'll talk again another time about biomimicry, which relates to the environment. And this is really sums up where the journey in sense, because it starts with creativity. I've got a few businesses now. We look at systems thinking. Systemic innovation is launched in North America, in the US, and in Canada. We've got some founders, Miriam Hashimi and myself. So we're doing a lot of initiatives, and we just need to get this into the school system to change the economic outputs of countries. You know, it's all doable. We just need to embrace the technology. That's the last slide now. So
Thank you so much, John. That was incredibly insightful and really in depth. And again, you know, I know we've got a lot of teachers on the line, and I just very briefly before we go into a Q&A, I would like to ask how, in practical terms, this can be brought into the classroom in terms of, you know, if you're in front of a maths class or if you're in front of an English class, what can a teacher do to try and bring out the best of their children in an entrepreneurial mindset, but in the restraints of a classroom? Or perhaps it can't be done in the restraints of a classroom.
Yes, it can. I think the teachers need more help. They need more resources. We need to teach the teachers leadership skills. And you know, often they're not privy to this neuroscience, the knowledge. We need to bring that into the school system itself so that the teachers are more capable. And then they'll encourage all the people in the class to be much more enterprise and think in a positive, as you say, right at the beginning, it's all about a mindset. It doesn't matter about the technology. We can embrace the technology if we've got the right attitude to embrace these technologies. Oh, can I hear you, Juliana?
I was on mute there. At least I'm not a cat. I'm sure we've all seen that cat. I'm not a cat, I can assure you. I've got the kids running around in the background, but no filter there. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we don't have Linda Way, so I'm the only female on the panel. I believe that Linda Way is having incredibly difficulties accessing internet in Johannesburg. It's not Nigeria, it's Joburg. Usually I thought, you know, they don't have intermittent electricity there, but nevertheless, we shall continue. We do have 15 or so minutes left. And I think we should still go into the segment that she was supposed to be hosting for us, which is about parent-teacher support. I know the majority of us online are, you know, African, and even if you're not African, that it takes a village to raise a child, you know, is a saying from everywhere, isn't it? So we all need to support one another, which is why we're having this discussion this morning. There was a question from Sunday Dalam, which Dr. Shaun has answered, but we will bring it up to all of us. And I know Matthew Odu, the CEO of HESED, has joined us finally. So he'll be able to also tell us a little bit more about what he's doing. So I will be sharing my screen again. We don't have long left, but let's look at the parental teacher support and how we can assist with that. So I'm just going to share my screen. Just give me one moment. Okay, we'll have a look at this, and then we'll open it up for Q&A before we leave.
In April 2020, Learning Heroes conducted a nationally representative survey of 3,600 parents and guardians to understand how they are experiencing their children's education during COVID-19 school closures. The survey found that parents' experience with remote learning has prompted them to build stronger relationships with their child's teachers and expect more from schools when they reopen. Most parents report being anxious, worried, and frustrated during this time, but a large majority also report being hopeful, grateful, and optimistic. Parents now feel more connected to their child's learning. But a significant gap remains between parents' perception of their child's achievement and the reality, with more than 9 in 10 parents thinking their child is at or above grade level in reading and math. In reality, it's closer to 37%. 7 in 10 parents want to know how schools plan to make up for material that was missed during school closures. As parents think about the next school year, they are energized to dig deeper to help their children succeed, knowing where their child is academically and getting a better understanding of what their child is expected to learn in their new grade. Parents are learning heroes. Let's support them in this role. For the full survey and free bilingual resources, visit bealearninghero.org. In April
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to spotlight. Hopefully you guys can see me, and David can go between us. We're going to open it up now in the last few minutes that we have before we go on to Matthew Odu. Dr. Shaun, I want to come to you. Let me just read a couple of the comments here. Paul J, he has said that creativity is certainly important in today's world and something that needs to be looked into more in Africa, certainly not lacking, just needs to be explored and stimulated more. That goes back to what John was saying. Let's just try and, bring everything that we've discussed together, Dr. Shaun, and talk about parents as well, because they play such an integral part, don't they, into, child's learning and development, and especially now because of the pandemic, a lot of children are learning, just on their phones at home in the corner of the bedroom. But then in Africa, if some people are not in front of the chalkboard, they're not getting any learning. Just, where are we at the moment with all of this, and where are we heading?
Yeah, I mean, and that is really that is quite really important and interesting. And I hope not to give a long answer, because there's just a lot, packed into that. And what Paul said on the chat as well, that there's a lot of creative things happening, on the street of the continent. Young people, creating new things from almost nothing. And I think what has happened is, like John was saying earlier on, that is why, the argument for a paradigm change is so important.
David, please stop like Dr. Shaun if you can.
Because
my face on screen.
No, your face is just lovely. So, because we are so locked in this, Western, paradigm of thinking, that we've ignored, our homegrown creativity and ideas. And that is why, we need a system that, that cohere, that, that bring together, the indigenous, creativity that we have in the continent with the state of the art strength, in knowledge and education. And that is so important. And one area, and also going back to what John was saying about, entrepreneurship, for example, we have a traditional apprenticeship system in the continent that dates back century, millennia, even. And but we have a system of education that almost entirely ignores that. So that is just one example about, and when you look at the apprenticeship system, we've heard about the Igbo, trader, apprentice, master, kind of a system. It is brilliant, it's fantastic. And it exists across the whole of Nigeria in one form or the other. And it's a way in which, you are not just learning, cognitively, but there's also the affective learning that takes place, the experiential, the context kind of learning, which is really important, to operationalization of creativity, because you're actually applying knowledge in context. That is what the apprenticeship system provides, and we've ignored that entirely. So, what we need to be doing is modernizing that so hugely successful system. You have, majority of millionaires, if at the risk of, of contradiction, or rather, without the risk of fear of contradiction, majority of millionaires that we have millionaire businessmen that we have in Nigeria today, were not product of our university systems. They are product of the apprenticeship systems. And we need to look back at how we can bring both worlds together. And coming back to the comment about parents is so important. It is very important, because now you have, we were talking the other day about gamification, about gamified learning. Young people in Africa are into games, and these things are so ubiquitous, on their mobile phones, they can play all these sorts of games, and learning is taking place to some of these facilities. And I think we need to, capture that. We need to, encourage, maybe parents to find a way of engaging with that, of encouraging their young people, their words, but also trying, of course, to regulate that, because you don't want, young people to be addicted to that. But more about, more active engagement, of parents in being interested. Because, so the currency of interest is so powerful for young people as it is, for what, teachers do in the classroom. The fact that my mom is happy or proud of me or interested in this particular thing that I'm doing is a powerful incentive for children. And even for parents who may feel they are not, adequate in terms of direct support, maybe in terms of helping children with homework, the fact that the parent asks, what have you done today? Even if it's just 15 minutes on the day. Oh, you scored, 9 out of 10. Yeah, that is so brilliant. Those simple acts of interest, of affirmation, can be so powerfully revolutionizing on the cognitive, mindset.
Down, I have to.
I will stop there.
Yeah, I know. You're a professor. We've got one question, which we've had a couple of questions, but I'll do. This is the last question we'll have to take, I'm afraid, from Faith again. She says, I see a need for a mind shift in the educational sector in Nigeria, from the government to the educators and then young people. No doubt there's so much potential in isolated breakthroughs here in Nigeria, but my question will be how to disrupt the current system in Nigeria that doesn't see the need for change. But we have a rising generation of teachers who know there is a need for change. Yes. John, could you try and, because you were about disrupting, and I'm sure some of your systems, you would have had a lot of red tape trying to get it into the universities, but some doors were opened. Let's get practical.
Yeah, what we need to do is create a new model and then have it in some schools so we can actually monitor its progress, get some capital to pay for this process, and then measure the performance. So it's more of a longer term viewpoint, but nevertheless, if we start early enough and then we can monitor people's progress, having this mindset, and the mindset applies to everybody. It isn't just a privileged few. It applies to everybody, no matter what level of education that they have. So we create a model of excellence, and then it can be copied. We're doing it in pockets around the world. It'd be great to do it in Nigeria, you know, because it's not hopefully too traditional. Maybe it can, you know, have the, you know, the idea of having a new model of excellence, and monitoring it from primary school, secondary school, and so on, and universities, and then see how those enterprising individuals, because they will be, and they'll be good at organizing relationships as well, and network science is a new model of science. We need to embrace all of these new sciences, neuroscience. Instead of waiting 50 years before we apply them, we should do it right now. And then we can copy that and say, right, this is a brilliant model of excellence. Let's copy it in other parts of you know, Lagos or wherever it may be. Lagos is one of the biggest you know, capitals in the world, and we need to prepare the young people there for that eventuality that they're competing with the rest of the world.
Thank you, John. And I want to add as well, Faith, you know, and I think that, you know, this is to everybody. I think we all remember those amazing teachers. You know, we remember the good ones and the bad ones, don't we? We remember the ones that are like, you know, you're never going to be anything, you talk too much. And there are those who were, you know, really lovely, you know, never kind of scolded the bad children, always wanted to get everybody working together. So, you know, it's cliche as it may sound, I do think change starts with us. It starts with us, and how we personally, you know, look at children and teach them, and, you know, try and elevate their mindset. And going back to religion, you know, as well, I know, you know, the prosperity gospel does get a big washing and a tongue lashing across the world. But, you know, sometimes, you know, that mindset of, you know, telling yourself you're a champion, telling yourself you can achieve, telling yourself you can do more, you know, those thoughts, you know, they do create feelings, and we know they do create actions. So there are so many culturally aspects of, you know, our people and Africa that I don't think we should negate, and I think we should hold on to. And I think, you know, from what we've learned today, there is room for that in the classroom. But of course, we do understand that we must embrace STEM or STEAM. Thank you, John, for adding an A into that. Yes, right. Okay, so there are a couple of questions here. Please do put your details down so that Matthew can talk to you. I will pass over to Matthew now. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but Matthew, you can just, you know, tell us a little bit about HESED, why you're doing this, you know, if there are any more events that you know, people can sign up to. So if we could spotlight Matthew, and I'll mute myself before sharing one last screen.
Yeah, so.
Matthew, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Muted, but not a cat.
We still can't hear you, Matthew. We still can't hear you, Matthew. If you...
Okay, so whilst we wait for Matthew, I know he's got...
Hello, you can hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
You pressed the button, well done.
Yeah, thank you, David. Like I was saying, I mean, the main idea behind HESED is to answer two questions. Is the quality of education and access of education in Nigeria. You see, and by and large in the continent. You see, there are great quality education as it is in Nigeria, but the question we have now is the distribution. The quality of access is a major, there's a major restriction. We have very few privileged individuals having, the greatest access to the quality education that is available. So the thinking behind HESED is to leverage on technology in distributing quality education more widely at an affordable price to people in Nigeria and by and large in the sub-region of Africa. So having said that, just like it's been discussed by the panelists, Dr. Sheung and John, is what we need, and which is very, very critical at this moment, is to prepare the young people, for the global competition that will necessarily take place. We don't want to have our kids, to be disadvantaged in terms of global competition. So the world is changing, it's becoming a global village. Our kids, we have to compete globally, not locally. So that is what we are trying to address with HESED. So bringing in digital learning, this will spread access beyond the traditional education where you have to go to the best of school to have access to the best of knowledge. And like Dr. Sheung said, the currency, the emerging currency in development now is that of knowledge. So we have to do a lot more now to prepare ourselves for the future. I will leave you with this in closing. There's a quote by Oprah Winfrey. It says, doing the best at the moment puts us, at the best place for the next moment. We want our kids to be at the forefront of the changing paradigm in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you so much, everybody, for waking up early on a Saturday morning, although I'm pretty sure most of us are in Nigeria, which is why we made it a little bit later. Just before you go, we do want to have, just very quickly, let me share my screen. Right, let me share my screen. Okay, I want to share my screen. La-di-da, here we are. Right, so just before we go, please, 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 because I know many of you didn't last time, if you can go on to Slido again for us. So if you go on to Slido, oh, can you see? Oh, goodness me, right, you're probably seeing that Mac, yeah, the Mac umbrella, aren't you? Okay, it stopped sharing, thank you. Thank you very much, David. But if you can go back onto Slido, there is an option. So it's S-L-I-D-O, S-L-I-D-O. There is an option to put in HESED. So if you put in the hashtag 35272, there is a live poll now where you could just let us know, what you thought of this. As we said, HESED is an online supplementary education platform. But we realize in these challenging times, we can't just be online and stale. We've got to be talking to people. We've got to understand what's going on, and we've got to share information. It's important. We're building networks. So please do that. Juliana, how can I locate Slido? Okay, that was Oludare. So literally, let me see if I can, I don't know what's happened to my window. Obviously, technology has struck again. But if you just put in S-L-I-D-O into your Google browser, and then there you can put in the hashtag 35272, you'll come up with, you will see the HESED question, and you can then answer. Yes. So that's pretty much all. Are there any last comments? I've got so many windows. I'm completely lost at the moment. So I'm sure you can all see me being a bit lost. Okay, I can see you all there. Are there any final questions that anybody has? Any final words and thoughts? John and Dr. Sharon, I'm sure everybody will be wondering how they can get in contact with you. So if you just want to share that very briefly.
I'm sorry, Sean, you go on. You're on mute anyway, so I will talk.
John.
But I'm John Rainford. The easiest way to get hold of me is at strawberryfields.com. That's the easiest email. I'll pass you over to Sean. Sean, you're on mute again.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Right. So I just typed my Twitter handle in the chat. I think it's gone to. Okay, it's not gone. So so I'm at capital S SEEUN at capital S Seun Kolade. So I'm trying to see if I can send to everyone again. So that is there. But also my personal email is seunkolade2014 at gmail.com. So my Twitter and email, I've sent it now on the chat. So you can follow me on Twitter or send me an email.
Yeah. So. Okay. Thank you for that. So we're logging off now. I'm also putting in the details for HESED, because HESED will be in touch with you. We will be sharing feedback from this. There are so many opportunities to partner and collaborate with HESED. We are located in Nigeria and in the UK, and we have people working with us in Australia, in America, across the entire world, and these discussions are going to be growing, and we are here to help you, especially the teachers who are in Nigeria. So please make sure you get in contact. And just so you know, we have had David Wortley in the background helping us out. So thank you very much. And I'm just putting the final bits and pieces in the chat for you to all have. So thank you.